Apple has done it. I was pretty lukewarm on the last iPad Pro update, and now I have to say, I am really excited for the new, and I can't believe I'm saying this, the new M4 OLED iPad Pro, and I really feel like this kind of changes everything once again, and I'm gonna explain why, because I just gotta say that this was a hype announcement. Apple came out right out of the gate saying that this was going to be one of the biggest days for the iPad. They said the biggest day for the iPad since the original iPad, which I think is just kind of crazy. I don't think it was that big, but it was a pretty nice surprise with a lot of upgrades to this device, because it's been a long time since we got an iPad Pro update, and Apple has a lot to prove here. I don't know if they necessarily proved all of it here, but they did a good job at least getting me excited again for this lineup. So let's talk about the iPad Pro. There's also a new iPad Air, really not that important, but let's talk about iPad Pro because that's the exciting thing here. Man, they did such a great job with this. I mean, there's not much you can do to make the iPad Pro like more of an upgrade, but they did it, right? They shrunk the bezels all around, so they're now giving you a smaller kind of 11-inch iPad Pro. The screen size remains the same, but it's a smaller version of it in dimensions. And then for the 12.9-inch version, that now moves up to a 13-inch display, so you get a slightly bigger display on the larger model. And then they make these things thin. They are the thinnest Apple products in history. Apple said they're thinner than an iPod Nano. That is just insane to me. Like the fact that you can get a 13-inch iPad, the thinness of it is thinner than an iPod Nano. Mind-blowing stuff here. So they're making these super thin. Apple claims it's just as strong as the old iPad Pro design. Take that however you want, because to be honest, those old iPad Pro designs weren't necessarily the strongest things in the world. But hey, I guess if you try and bend it or something like that, it'll probably bend. If you're using it normally, put it in your bag, be smart about it. I'm sure you'll be fine. It's still made of aluminum, right? And then the showstopper here really for hardware is the display. And for iPad, it's all about display. It's a giant, tablet with a, big display, especially on the 13-inch. And Apple is getting rid of LCD in the entire iPad Pro lineup, and they are bringing in OLED to the 11 and the 12.9-inch versions. The specs for these OLED displays are pretty good, because to make larger OLED panels, apparently it is pretty difficult to get like the brightness right on them. So Apple's kind of using this dual stacked OLED technology. Like they even have an official name for this type of OLED technology. They're calling it tandem OLED, which is a weird marketing term in general for this. And that's going to allow this iPad Pro to get really bright for an OLED display of its size. Don't forget, when we're talking about phones, we're talking about displays that are, 6.7 inches, 6.8 inches. This is going all the way up to a 13-inch display, so it still has to hit those higher brightness levels that we're used to on LCD displays. And Apple is basically saying that this is going to get up to 1,000 nits of full screen brightness, and then up to 1,600 nits of peak brightness when watching HDR video. Very similar spec to what you would expect to see on something like an iPhone Pro. This display is so advanced, they're even giving it a new marketing name. They're calling it the Ultra Retina XDR display. That's a mouthful, but that is what Apple is calling it. And yeah, this is the largest OLED display that Apple has ever manufactured. I assume it's going to look pretty amazing. What was really interesting about this display though is that there's now two options for a standard glass display and then a nano texture display. That's something that Apple put on like their, bigger Pro displays, and apparently that will reduce like reflectivity. So if like the sun's hitting it or like a powerful light's hitting it, you should be able to see the display a little bit better. I've never personally used any of these nano textured glass displays before. I hear they're kind of like a little difficult to clean, so I'm not necessarily sure if I'm going to get one, but I gotta be honest, it is tempting, because one of the things I don't like when using my iPad is when you are using it in like a bright environment and you just see the glare everywhere. So it's tempting, not sure if I'm gonna get it, but hey, it's an option now, which I like. More options, always good. So you got that new design, the thinnest Apple product ever, I assume one of their best displays ever, and now Apple just showering us with all of these new hardware announcements. They go and do it. They put in an M4 chip in it. They leapfrog a whole chip generation, going from M2, skipping M3, putting M4, debuting the M4 chip, not in a Mac, but in an iPad. And that is when I went, okay, the hardware on this thing is absolutely insane. The M4 sounds like a beast. It comes with a whole bunch of new technological improvements. In fact, this is the first time an M series chip is getting a bump up in the standard CPU cores. An M series chip always shipped with 8 CPU cores as max. And now this M4 chip is going to ship with 10 CPU cores as max. And it comes with 120 gigabytes of memory bandwidth. It comes with, Apple made a big point of this, and I kind of talked about this in my prediction video about AI. They were talking about all the neural engine enhancements they made to the M4 chip, how great it's going to be for AI tasks. They went over a few AI tasks that are kind of already baked in to iPad OS, but I really feel like, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, I really feel like those AI announcements, the software for this thing, the complete story, and they kind of mentioned this. They said, WWDC, their next event for software, is only 1 month away. I feel like we're going to hear a lot more about AI at WWDC, but I feel like that M4 chip is going to be integral to a lot of dedicated AI features that are coming to this iPad Pro. But yeah, M4 looks insane. I think the maximum memory is still 16 gigabytes if you get the 1 terabyte and 2 terabyte version. And it looks like a really powerful chip, still pretty energy efficient. And the fact that they're just putting it in the iPad Pro to start with, showing this in an iPad first, not a Mac, I think says a lot about what Apple is trying to plan here with this iPad. They are really trying to say, hey, we know that the Mac basically got a lot of love recently. We know that last update to the M2 iPad Pro was a little lackluster. Let us show you what we can do here with these announcements. Let us show you that the iPad Pro is going to eclipse, and make no mistake, it has. When you look at the hardware, the M4 chip, an OLED display, the thinnest Apple product ever, when you look at these hardware announcements today, the iPad Pro once again eclipses the MacBook Pro in terms of overall hardware. And that's not even the end of the announcements, because they also changed the camera to landscape. They got rid of the ultra-wide camera on the back, which I thought was weird, but okay, I feel like most people probably aren't using the cameras on the iPad Pro anyway. And they introduced some new accessories for this iPad Pro. A new Magic Keyboard, which looks really cool. The white color in particular, I'm like, okay, I gotta get that. It has a mixed design, has an aluminum bottom, and then I still believe it still has the fabric top. And it also gets function key rows added to this keyboard now. And the trackpad is now glass, has haptic feedback, just like the Mac. So even the keyboard, this accessory, and it's still the same price, which is good, but it's still really expensive, like $300. Even that keyboard is just elevating the whole design and whole hardware of the iPad Pro to make it a much more premium looking package. And that Apple Pencil, the Apple Pencil Pro they're calling it now, which I guess is a smart naming scheme. You wouldn't want to keep going down the Apple Pencil number route. Apple Pencil Pro has a bunch of improvements to it. It has a new rotation thing so you can rotate the brush, has haptic feedback, and it just looks really cool. They were going, I'm not an artist, but they were going through this whole presentation drawing with Procreate. And the whole time I was watching that, I was going, you know what? I really should try and get into drawing. What they're doing here with this Apple Pencil is really inspirational, really cool stuff. And it made me go, I need to get more creative. I need to find more uses for my Apple Pencil. But I'm kind of hoping that they weren't necessarily clear if the haptic feedback is just something when you squeeze it, it gives you haptic feedback. Or I wonder when you're drawing and writing as well, if that can translate to haptic feedback. So maybe it feels like you're writing more on a physical piece of paper than an iPad screen. I think the biggest shocker to me was actually the price, because we heard so many rumors going into this that the iPad Pro was gonna get a major price increase. There were some crazy numbers thrown out there that I necessarily didn't believe from the start. I've heard starting prices as high as it's gonna start at $1,600 or $1,500 for the 11-inch. And I was always I don't know about that. Maybe for the 12.9-inch, it'll do that, but for the 11-inch, that's insane. Who's buying a 256 gigabyte $1,700 iPad Pro? I really feel like that would be a stretch, even if the display technology was amazing. But thankfully, that's not the case. Now, it does get a slight bump in price. So the 11-inch also gets a starting increase in storage. So it starts at 256 gigabytes, but the price now starts at $1,000. Same for the 13-inch iPad Pro. It now starts at $1,300. I believe that's a $100 increase over the previous version. Again, starts at 256 gigabytes of storage. So slight price increases. It actually brings the price a little more in line with the MacBook Air and also, strangely enough, the iPhone 15 Pro, because that also starts at $999. So MacBook Air $999, iPad Pro $999, MacBook Air $999. It's a very popular price for Apple. But yeah, a little more expensive, not as bad as we thought. Seems pretty fair for the technology they're packing into this device. I think this looks like a really good hardware product. It's probably one of the best hardware products that Apple has ever made. Just looking at the specs of it, looking at the design, this thing looks amazing. I want to use this iPad Pro so badly. But there's one missing piece here, and it's the missing piece we've had for so long on iPad. And every year we think, this is the time it changes. This is the time when the iPad ascends and overtakes the Mac. And you look at these designs, you look at this hardware, you look at this new keyboard, and you go, ooh, M4 chip, all this great stuff. I wish I could run all my Mac programs on it. And that didn't happen. And when you look at iPad software in general, even though they're making these improvements year over year, it still doesn't feel like it's caught up to be like a true professional product. And there were some software announcements today. Like they introduced like a new version of Final Cut Pro and Logic. They introduced Final Cut Camera, which looked pretty insane. Like you could do like 4 iPhone cameras and then sync that to the iPad and like monitor those cameras on the iPad like all in real time. Looked really cool. Don't know who's doing that, but it looked really cool. And then, you know, the iPad Pro, again, great hardware. It has like a reference color mode. So if you're using it in the professional field, there are some use cases for this. But I just kind of feel like the software still isn't what it could potentially be here. I feel like there's so much more this device could do that would make me say, look how great this thing is. I won't use my Mac. And looking at this now, even though the hardware is amazing, I can't foresee giving up my Mac. And maybe that's Apple's strategy. I don't think they want you to give up one of their products, but it just feels kind of incomplete in a way. But there's always a chance, right? I feel like there's still a missing piece here with this iPad. Why does it have an M4 chip? Why is that power so important? Why did they mention AI? I think at WWDC, hopefully, we will see some sort of announcement that will more complete this product announcement to really show us what the iPad is capable of in terms of software, whether that's with new AI features or whether that's with a whole new way of thinking about this operating system. I really hope we see something there that gives us a little bit more with iPad because, again, this hardware looks great and I really want to use it. And I'm going to order one because the hardware just looks that good. All right, but yeah, so that's basically it. You can order the iPad Pro right now if you're watching this video. I believe it ships on the 15th, so if you want an iPad Pro, go get one. Looks like a good device. And yeah, that's this video. I'm probably gonna do a buyer's guide because there's a whole bunch of things I didn't mention in this video. So if you wanna see that video, make sure you stick around, get subscribed, like this video if you like my ramblings, and I'll see you all in the next one.